we did start to talk about a couple of these, but I want to go over and make sure that we have each of our concepts down. So if you are looking at something like 109, 109 is a real number because it's a number. So everything when you go about doing your test needs to be a real number. And then it is also it's going to be a pain, isn't it? So it's a real, it's rational because we could rewrite it as a fraction. And then it is also an integer because it could go on my number line. And it is a natural and a whole number. Example B is an irrational. It's irrational because it is a square root, and when you type it in on your calculator, the square root of 6 gives you this crazy long decimal. And my board is frozen, or my camera is frozen rather. So it is a real irrational. And then if you look at pi, pi is also a real irrational. Yes. Exactly. Okay, for the next part, the number 400, its opposite is negative 400. Its reciprocal is 1 over 400. And the sign of the original is the sign of the reciprocal. The opposite is the additive inverse. So if it's negative 8/3, my opposite is positive 8/3. And then your reciprocal is the same sign, so negative, but flip your fraction. In 17, it doesn't matter that it is a square root. The opposite is negative the square root. The reciprocal is 1 over the square root. In 4a plus 7b minus 2d, we're going to plug in the given values of a, b, c, and d. So when you plug in a, it's 3. So it's 4 times 3 plus 7 times b, which is 4, minus 2 times d, which is 9. Multiply each individually. So 4 times 3 is 12. 7 times 4 is 28. And 2 times 9 is negative 18. And then you add 12 plus 28 and negative 18 together to get positive 22. Similarly, in example B, we have 4, 3, you're multiplying times C, which is negative 5, minus D, which is 9, plus 3 times A, which is 3. Work inside the parentheses and order of operations first. So again, it's all about PEMDAS. So 3 times negative 5 is negative 15. Now you clean up the negative 15 and the negative 9 because we're still stuck on parentheses. So it's 4, negative 24, plus 3 times 3, which is parentheses, gives you 9. Now 4 times negative 24 is negative 96. Add 9 to that.
Students, please report to the library at this time. Elliot Wenzel, Jacob Stroll, Craig Rugg, Noah Lobig, Nathan Gooch, Alex Siege, and Tatum Gerba. Those students, please report to the library at this time.
And you get negative 87. Okay, take a minute and try the 2 down at the bottom, and then we'll do them together as a group. Take a minute, try the 2 down at the bottom. So again, you want to start by plugging in all of your values, then working within your parentheses to get rid of multiplication. Clean up the multiplication in the denominator. What's your negative times a negative? That's a positive. Be careful about your subtracting. And you get 170 over 13. Yes. Yeah. If you do a decimal, you have to have 3 decimal points after it. If you change the decimals, there must be 3 decimal points after. Okay, flip it over. Let's look at the next page. Okay, so on the back, the first thing we're doing is distributing and then combining like terms. So letter A, you want to distribute and combine like terms. So distribute and combine like terms. In letter B, distribute your negative and combine like terms. Now, be very careful distributing the negative in example B, because you need to make sure you distribute that negative to both the 4 and the 6. So in example B, it's 3y minus 4y minus 6x. Combining like terms, you get negative y minus 6x. In C, once again, distribute the negative to both parts. So you get negative 3x plus 4y minus z. And there are no like terms, so we leave it as is. Okay, go ahead and let's look at 5A. So once again, in this example, your goal is to isolate the W. So we isolate W by getting all of the W's to one side and all of the numbers to the other. So you want to subtract your 4, subtract your 9W. Once you get W's on the left and numbers on the right, divide by -1, and you get W equals 11. What could I do to check that W equals 11? So Jesse? Yeah. So exactly, if you wanted to make sure what you did or what you got was correct, then what you could do is take that W and plug it back in. So it would be 8 times 11 plus 4 equals 9 times 11 minus 7. So 8 times 11 is 88. 88 plus 4 is 92. 9 times 11 is 99. 99 minus 7 is 92. So since both sides equal 92, we know that our value is correct. Go ahead and try example B. So again, in example B, be very careful. A positive times a positive is a positive. A positive times a negative is a negative. A negative times a positive is a negative. And a negative times a positive is a negative. At this point, you want to combine like terms on one side of the equal to start. I think we did this one yesterday, didn't we? Okay. In C, distribute your 10. So you get 10 minus 20y equals negative 10y plus 5. Get y's on one side and numbers on the other. It doesn't matter what way you go. So maybe you add 20 so your y's become positive. Subtract 5. And we get 5 equals 10y. Divide by 10. And that's the same as y equals 1/2. It is the same as y equals 1/2. Okay, go ahead and try 6 on your end if you haven't already done so. Again, try A, B, and C. If you're doing pretty good at this on your own, then you should be pretty confident for tomorrow. right, so let's talk through these. In letter A, it says 8 more than. That means we're adding. Product means to multiply. So if it's 8 more than the product, you're multiplying n and 100 and adding 8. The order doesn't matter. You could do 100n plus 8 or 8 plus n times 100. Why doesn't order matter? Multiplication and addition are both what? What's the order switching? It's a property. Sophia? Commutative. The commutative property of addition and multiplication say the order doesn't matter. N times 100 is the same as 100 times n. 8 plus the product is the same as the product plus 8. Now, subtraction matters. The word difference means to subtract. So the difference of a number and n. So that's n minus 43. It's the difference of the two. Cube is a power. So it's the cube of the difference, which means it's n minus 43 all cubed. Sum means to add. So the sum of 207 times a number. So you're going to take 200 and add it to 7n. Okay, fractions. Everybody hates the fractions. So it's x equals 3/2 ATV. We're solving for t. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of that fraction. Don't divide by a fraction because then you have a fraction and a fraction, and that's a no-no. So what you want to do is multiply by your reciprocal. So the reciprocal of 3/2 is 2/3. So you get 2/3 x equals ATV. So if you're multiplying by A and multiplying by V, how do you get rid of multiplication? Sophia? Perfect. So we're going to divide by AV. The 2/3, that 3 can go down with the A and V. So it's 2x, 3AV equals 2. Yes. Yes. Okay, and letter C, P equals pi m squared n. If you want n by itself, it's being multiplied by pi m squared. So how do you get rid of multiplication? You divide. If you can do something like letter C, you're in good shape for tomorrow. Just can't write. Okay, and then the last part is example A. This would be kind of like the bonus I'm going to ask you for tomorrow. So we're just going to briefly go through it. so that you have an idea. But if you have something with parentheses and a variable on both sides, you're going to distribute to get rid of the parentheses. And then you are going to manipulate the equation so that the x's are on one side and the variables that have no x's are on the other. So distribute, we're solving for x, so you want to get all the x's on the left and the other stuff on the right. So that gives me ax minus bx equals negative b plus 3a minus 8. Putting all the x's on one side gives you a GCF, which allows you to solve for x. Oftentimes I see on this problem, people trying to leave me an x on the left and an x on the right. All right. So what I'm going to have you do for the last few minutes is I did create sort of like a review on Kahoot with like 11 more questions. It's not mandatory. If you do it, it's excellent practice. It's not mandatory. I'm going to let you get your phone so you can have the code for it. So let me mark them first. You have no homework. If you want to use that mid-chapter stuff as practice, you can. The answer key is posted on Fusion and Teams. So you have no homework except for to study. If you want to use the next few pages in the packet to study, you can. The back page is a summary of all of the rules and properties that you should have memorized. So that back page is a summary of all of the rules and things you could have memorized. All right, you may get your phones. Yes.